In today's video, I'll be reviewing The Road to Joy by Coach Scott Drew. This book was a gift from my brother, who got it at a book signing, so thank you to Nick and thank you to Coach Drew for the autograph. So The Road to Joy is largely about the journey of the men's basketball team over the last decade since Scott Drew has taken over as head coach. But it also has an underlying story of God and His providence. With that said, the first takeaway I had from the book is seek wise counsel. Scott Drew had only been head coach at a university for 1 year before he had the opportunity to move over to Baylor University. And it was in the midst of a national scandal where one of the former players killed another player. In many people's minds, it was a terrible time to be entering into the program since it had been entrenched in a whole lot of bad press and bad circumstances. Many people expected that there would be sanctions in the following years because of what had happened. Since Scott Drew had only been head coach for 1 year at a university level, he sought the advice of his father and other coaches, of his wife, of friends, and of God before landing on the decision. When he entered the head coaching position, he had a long road ahead, not only trying to recruit new players, but trying to keep old players who had the opportunity to move to different schools. The NCAA had allowed any players on Baylor to move schools if they wanted without any sanctions against them. This leads me to my second takeaway. Know your audience when you're recruiting, both in getting the job at Baylor, getting players to stay, and getting new players, and eventually building up the program to a place where it could win the national championship. Scott Drew is a great recruiter, and one of the keys to his success is knowing his audience. The final takeaway I had from the book, and the one I'll spend the most time on, is the subject of joy. Now, as you noticed from the title, it says The Road to Joy, and it just looks like an ordinary joy. But throughout the book, it's actually broken down into an acronym, JOY, which stands for Jesus, Others, and Yourself. This is, I believe, the focal point of the book, that by serving Jesus first, others second, that yourself will actually be blessed in the process. So the order of the subjects is just as important as the subjects themselves. To show you this, let's break down each one individually. As Scott Drew was developing the basketball program after the scandal, he had sort of a roadmap of where they wanted to go, and a plan of how they would get better each and every year. And while some years would be a progression in the right direction, others would feel like they were falling backwards. On that subject, the reason that Jesus is first in this order of progression is that He is the only one who knows the way ahead. If you trust yourself and only yourself, you may be disappointed in the results that you see. But if you trust Jesus and you know that regardless of how the outcomes come out, and you continue to do the actions that will eventually lead to the success, not only will you be filled with joy when things finally come together, but you realize that it wasn't purely up to you. Next, we'll move on to others, and others really came into play after they had won the national championship. After winning, Scott Drew talked to several people who had won in the past, former coaches and current coaches in the sports world. From John Wooden to Bill Belichick, Scott Drew looked at the lives of people who had won time and time again. And quite frequently, the difference between teams that won once and teams that won again and again had to do with the fact that the teams thought of others more than they thought of themselves. It's a similar idea to the idea that I took away from John Wooden's book, They Call Me Coach. Yesterday's success doesn't mean you'll have success in the future. Part of winning a championship multiple years in a row, or going back to back in winning in business or life, really comes down to thanking everyone that helped get you there, and then going back to work and putting in the effort to get there again. And that leads us to the final component of the JOY acronym, yourself. As Scott Drew learned to put Jesus first and others second, he grew himself. As you prioritize faith and service, you will grow as a person. All of that to say, I really enjoyed the book. And if you're interested in picking up a copy, I'd highly recommend it. With that said, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next video.